Warriors up by 32 here. Payton dribbles it to Santos. Santos one-on-one. In traffic. Throws it outside. Moody for three. No good. Pajemski the rebound. Back out to Payton. Payton in no hurry over to Moody. 10 on the shot clock. Moody on the far wing. Guarded by Banting. Got in the corner. Waters there. Rainbow triple. Good for Waters. 1:30.
5 o'clock, and he was actually at the game last night.
Yeah.
He reached out to me, and I reached out to some people I know, and I got him and his lady into the iHeart suite. So he was hanging out at Moda Center last night. I think that might have been our first NBA game. So he had a chance to treat her to basketball. So Noah's going to come in. We'll talk football. I'm a little bit disappointed with the slate. There's a couple of good games in the NFL this week, and there's a couple of games I want to sit down and watch in college, but not some of the beefy matchups like we've had over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, this is kind of an off week for really big games.
Yeah, I do expect Oregon to beat Illinois, but I will say this. As we've learned in college football this year, you got to be ready to roll, show up, prepared, and ready to go, or anyone can get knocked off. That's what it feels like. Illinois is a well-coached team by Coach Bielema, and they've got some skilled position players. They're playing good football. They're organized. They're well-coached. So they're a dangerous team. You got to show up ready to go, and I expect Oregon to do that, but that Illinois would be one of those teams where you don't want to make mistakes, get behind the chains, turn it over because they'll capitalize. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. If you want to reach out, you'll find Godfather on social media at Dwight Jaynes. You'll find me there at Chad in Rip City. And we also, and we'll do this at 4:20, but coming off the first game with a brand new television network, the Trailblazers Television Network, and their partnership with K2 and their affiliates, I want to open this up, and so does the Godfather. We want to know what your experience was like. And we're going to talk about this at 4:20. We want you to call in. We want you to reach out on social media, and we want to know how it went, whether or not you got the antenna and watched through Channel Charge 2.2, or if you were able to access it through Comcast, Channel 302. Were you able to access it on Fubo? What was that overall experience like? And maybe you went Blazer Vision to pick up the games. What was that experience like? Did you like the streaming? Was the service good? We want to cover all of that because we're trying to get the information out to the masses to know what's working, what's not working, so we can continue to help you through this process, because I got nonstop questions yesterday and into the night throughout the game about all of the different setups with the television. So we're going to get to that at 4:20, but we'll start with the opener last night. It was great to see a lot of familiar faces. I worked with a number of people who were in town, who were down in the Bay Area covering the game for the Warriors. Terry Stotts was back in town, first time in Portland under an official capacity for an NBA team. And, of course, he's working for the Warriors now, so that was pretty sweet. But the game, yeah, I didn't really know what I expected last night, but I did not expect that. 139-104 was the final. It turns out the 35-point defeat is the worst opening night loss for the Blazers in franchise history. And going into the game last night, the Blazers were 23-10 all-time in home openers at home. But the Warriors came out, and they dominated the basketball game after the first quarter. They dominated second and third, and by the fourth quarter, it was over, Godfather. But, the game, I guess it did play out from this standpoint. When you have the Blazers, who are the youngest roster in the NBA, they've got a lot of new faces in the starting lineup playing together for the first time, and they're trying to do a couple of things, play fast, and they've got this new defensive identity that they're trying to foster and develop. The Warriors are the last team you want to play to start the year when you are working on these things and developing a new identity on defense because of their experience level and the way they run their offense and execute. The movement, the passing, and we saw after the first quarter last night that the Warriors were really able to frustrate the Trailblazers defense with that execution.
Chad, it was almost surgical in the way they did it. They picked them apart, and part of the thing is Portland's defense tends to be aggressive defense where they're trying to steal the ball, force turnovers, getting after people, which is great. That's fine. But the problem is when you play a team like Golden State who uses backdoor passes, wants you to overplay them a little bit so they can cut behind you, all the things they do with moving the ball, you end up leaving people open. And that's just what happens in this situation, particularly with a young team that really hasn't mastered this defensive setup yet, in my opinion. They've got a ways to go. But they want to do it. They're aggressive, It's a solid system. They just have a ways to go with it. And when you play Golden State on opening night, good luck with that.
Yeah, it's tough. They execute extremely well.
Yeah.
And
Really
Steph
well.
Curry was a perfect example last night. He didn't have it going from outside. He was not making the three-point shot. So he just adjusted his game and became a facilitator and set up for his teammates. He had a darn near triple-double through only 3 quarters of work last night, first, second, and third. 17 points, 10 assists, 9 rebounds.
Yeah, pretty good.
A very effective night for a guy who realized early on he didn't have it going. And then, I think the Blazers, and we'll see how this continues to play out, but Chauncey was upset because, he didn't see the guys. He didn't think they did anything well in the game last night. And I just think the execution, this when it comes to defense, Godfather, you've been around a lot of coaches. Doesn't it take time when you have new faces on the floor because you've got Avia, you've got Ayton, you've got Tamani, and you've got that group of 5 out there. They haven't really played a lot of time together, right?
Right.
And it takes time when you're trying to really develop a defensive identity in terms of who's going to be the vocal person on the court. I'm assuming they want Tamani to be that guy or Jeremy Grant to be vocal and kind of direct traffic. For guys to understand where they need to be. Like, this doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to develop that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I've always thought opening night anyway is sort of a special thing. You never know what's going to happen on opening night. I sat in that building in dismay a couple of years watching the Blazers lose to Vancouver, a lousy team, and Orlando, another lousy team, on opening night because you just don't know how you're going to play. There's too many questions. There's too much going on. You don't get a good scouting report. But Chauncey said something last night that was true. He said, I didn't think any of my players played well. I got to tell you, Chad, I don't know if I've ever seen a final box score where one team had all of its players in uniform in plus, not in negative numbers, but they were all non-negative contributors while they were on the floor. And the other side, the Blazers, every player who played was negative. Usually you sneak a couple guys on late in a streak where you're playing well and they get a positive number. Didn't work. It's just one of those things that happens.
Yeah. And we see this in sports a lot. What I think happened, the Blazers came out early in the game with a lot of energy, and they were playing with a lot of energy early, especially on defense. And the problem is they weren't making shots. Their offense was struggling. And then the Warriors hit them in the second quarter. They put up 41 points, and they had that strong run to end the first half. I think it was 18-6. And I feel like they didn't have a response. And after they got punched in the face by the Warriors in that second quarter, it took all the energy out of them, and they just were flat the rest of the game. And we saw them going through the motions, not really knowing how to execute on offense, not really having a feel for defense. And it's just one of those games that got away because of the elements there where they had no energy, no emotion after that first quarter, and they had no response to the Warriors really hitting them hard in the second and third quarters. And I don't think they expected that, and they had no response.
Yeah, you saw in the first quarter, they played well defensively especially. They didn't necessarily make shots, but they played well defensively. They had the crowd behind them. It was a noisy building in that first quarter. Fans were really into it. They were seeing this team hustle, make plays defensively. They were all over the place. But what happens is NBA teams adjust to whatever it is you're doing. And you got a couple of pretty smart guys over there on the Golden State bench. And they just took out the whiteboards and start making a few drawings on there, drawing up a couple of sets that seemed to work pretty well. And all of a sudden, they were scoring like crazy. And they're just, when that happens and you're a younger team, it's not like, I mean, what you have to do as a veteran team is adjust to what their adjustment is.
Yeah.
But when you're young, I think it just saps the energy right out of you. You're just like, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, I think the other thing, energy-wise, and this was unique last night, but the Blazers, as you know, and Chauncey Billups has talked about it, he wants his team to play fast. They want to push the tempo. They want to push the pace. They believe that playing fast is going to give them a chance to compete against the teams they have to face, especially over the first 31. Play fast because no one else is really going to do that the way they want to do it. The problem is Steve Kerr, unique from the standpoint that he played all 12 guys.
Yeah.
So he's ushering guys in and out of the lineup who are all fresh, and the Blazers are trying to play at a pace that's fast that they're not accustomed to, and that takes conditioning and time to get your mind and body used to that type of play. And when you're playing a coach that's willing to play all 12 guys, he had fresh dudes out there the whole time.
Yeah, Golden State's always been willing to run. They are willing to run. And one of the old concepts in basketball was if a team presses you, press them back. If a team is running out on you, run out on them. Do whatever it is they're doing to you because they probably don't like it done to them. And Golden State was fully prepared to run back on the Blazers. They started leaking out and getting a lot of easy baskets. Transition defense from Portland was not good.
No. The Warriors had a 31-5 edge in fast break points.
Wow.
The two numbers that really jumped out last night, 31-5 edge in fast break points for the Warriors, and Golden State at the end of the night was plus 36 at the three-point line. And if you watch enough NBA in today's world, you know that when you're minus 36 at the three-point line and a team's plus 26 in fast break points, that's a bad combination.
There's not much
the best
left
combination.
There's
in the world.
not a lot left for you to do when those things happen.
No, there's not. And even Chauncey said after the game, he was asked what he thought about the looks they got from three. And he said, probably half were not great looks. They were up against it on the shot clock. They were contested. And he thought some of the looks were good. But the majority of them, or at least half of them, he didn't think were good looks from downtown.
Yeah.
And the Warriors, they're passing, and they've been doing this for years. But all it takes is a few ball reversals and the way they whip it around the court.
Yeah.
And they can get not just the Blazers, but many teams to break down defensively. And before you know it, it results in wide open looks from downtown.
Yeah, the people who don't like Steve Kerr as a coach really ought to sit down and watch what he does offensively. And now he's brought Terry Stotts on board, who's added 2 or 3 of his Portland sets into what they do. So they're even more capable now of doing that, Chad, moving the ball, moving bodies, getting backdoor layups, wide open threes.
Well, we answered a question, too, in the game. We had tried to come up with which Trailblazer was the most likely Trailblazer to irritate and frustrate and get into a tiff with Draymond Green. Our 3 players were Tamani Kamara, Donovan Clingan, and Denny Avia. And the answer to the question was Denny Avia. Avia irritated Draymond. He fouled Denny. Draymond disagreed with the call and barked at the officials for an extended period of time and finally got teed up. So there you go.
Yeah, I would say Derek Collins, probably the referee, irritated Draymond more than Avia did. But that's just it's just such a cliche to see him go off and then the whole bench getting up, trying to mollify him, trying to calm him down. Kerr calls a timeout just to get him calmed down, doesn't want to lose him in the first game of the season. But that's a situation too, Chad. You're winning the game by a big margin. You only got like 2 fouls on you anyway.
What does it matter?
Just take the foul and move on. It's a bad call. If you thought it was a bad call, fine. Just go ahead and play the rest of the game, right?
You know what's amazing to me? Draymond, for a guy with his track record, it is amazing to me how much runway he's got to bark at the officials.
No question. He gets away with more than anybody did. It's like Rodman. Rodman was the same way. They just let him go on and on and on.
That's pretty wild that he's allowed to do what he does with his track record.
Yeah, and he's begging for a tee. I mean, when you argue that long with multiple officials, I'm glad Collins finally got him for it because he started off arguing with Tyler Ford, the crew chief.
All right, we'll get into Scoot Henderson. We'll talk about the three-point shooting. That's going to be something to keep an eye on throughout the course of the year. We'll do that at 4:20 in combination with our discussion about the new Trailblazers television network. But when we come back, we got to talk some football. We'll dive into both college and the NFL. And what are the main things that Dan Lanning needs to be focused on right now with this team playing good football, undefeated, and in control of the Big Ten? Alex Brink, former Coug, is up next. All right, it's time to talk football with our college football and NFL insider from E4 Sports, former Washington State Cougar quarterback Alex Brink. Alex, so if I understand this correctly, you played golf at Pronghorn today. I've not played there. How nice was it? I'm jealous.
Boys, it's 60 degrees over in Central Oregon. Sun is shining, and I just walked off the golf course at Pronghorn. It was a good day, man. It was a beautiful day. It's a great course. I strongly recommend anybody to come out, give it a chance, stay and play at the hotel.
How'd you play?
Really average today. It was not my day, but happy to be out there any day you can play golf on a weekday.
That's awesome. Well, let's go ahead and start with this. The news that broke: Oregon State, Washington State are going to play twice next year. What do you think about that arrangement?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, in the landscape of college football, it's a good thing, right? Washington State and Oregon State get to play each other. It's, they're playing high-level football. You get a home and home, so they both get, quality home matchup, right? You stay, from a travel perspective, you stay in the Northwest, which I think is also a benefit. Obviously, it's not what you would want if you were in a league and doing the whole thing, but it's going to help them fill their schedule out, which I know Washington State, I think, has 2 spots to fill. Oregon State is pretty close to filling theirs, if not already have theirs filled up. So I think it just helps both teams out, but it's also high-level football. Plus, you can probably do some fun things, right, so around the marketing of it, and it's going to get some attention during the season.
Alex, I was just wondering if the second one is perhaps a placeholder game in case you get a chance to book somebody else late. Maybe then you can both agree to dump that game and add someone else.
I think it's super fair. I mean, that's kind of the point of having this Pac-2 relationship currently, is that you can have those conversations, and the athletic departments are working closely together. So I think you're right. I think that's why you put it late, because you can definitely fill a spot if you need to.
Alex Brink, our college football and NFL insider here on the Rip City Drive. Going into that game last week with Texas and Georgia, I was under the impression, based on play and based on what the experts said, that Texas, with their experience up front, best offensive line in college football, and then Georgia goes out there and just physically manhandles them and wins the game with their defense. I mean, what were your thoughts on the way Georgia was able to handle Texas up front?
Well, I think we kind of talked about it last week. That was my hesitation in taking Texas in that game, was that, in the past, Georgia has always been the more physical football team. And I know that Texas has lost a lot of those games over the last handful of years when people thought they were really good, and then, played a more physical team, played an SEC team that just had a different caliber of athlete in the front seven. And, again, like, it kind of played out the same way. And to your point, it felt like this year's Texas team was different so that they would have a chance. But in the end, it didn't play out that way. And I think, Kirby Smart's a great, defensive-minded head football coach. He gets those athletes ready to play, and it was a mauling, man. I just thought, watching that game, I know there was a lot of back and forth, obviously the stuff with the Texas fans. And to me, it just felt like Georgia, on that day was better, and to your point, more physical.
All right, I wanted to ask you about the decision that was made by Steve Sarkisian. In that game, he pulled Quinn Ewers for a couple of series. They put in Manning, and then in the second half, he went back to Ewers. And he said that at the time he just wasn't seeing it. And I'm just wondering, had you played in a game like that where, for whatever reason, you went through a slump in the game where you just weren't seeing it, and maybe the chance to step away could help you before you went back in?
Look, if the reality is if Quinn Ewers is your guy, you don't need to pull him so he can see it better. You got to let him do it, right? And, he got hurt early in the year, but he's been playing some good football. Obviously, he was in the conversation for one of the best quarterbacks, I think, in the country and coming out. If that's the case, right, and you're Steve Sarkisian and you truly believe that, then I just don't think I don't think you pulled the guy. I get it. He was struggling, but you see what's happened, right? Like, the rhetoric changes now. Like, you don't unwind that decision, and you don't just go back to everything being normal. That becomes a short leash. That becomes conversations about what's next. Now, you already had the pressure of Arch Manning over your shoulder because of who he was, and he played okay when you were hurt. If you're Ewers, now you got to be thinking about it even more. I just think it's a really tough spot to put your supposed starting quarterback in.
Alex, what do you think? What issues are Kalen DeBoer facing down in Alabama right now?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, again, when Kalen DeBoer got hired, you felt like it was a home run. Just took the Huskies to a national championship. He's returned. They had some turnover in the transition from Nick Saban, but he backfills it. In the portal. Plus, you get you get your starting quarterback coming back. I mean, there's a lot of good right on that Alabama roster. I think it's a culture thing. Honestly, I think it's really hard to replace a legend like Nick Saban. I think it's less about X's and O's, and I think it's more about bringing a whole new staff in, a whole new culture, and trying to figure out how that fits. And there's been moments on that field, right, where you've seen players kind of act out. Undisciplined could be the word at times, and it just flat wouldn't happen, right, with a guy with the legend Nick Saban. And I feel like Kalen DeBoer, who's a really good football coach who can build his own culture, is experiencing what it's like to face that transition, even at a place like Alabama.
Hey, Alex, I'm wondering, when you're on a good football team, like the Oregon Ducks right now, and you're cruising, you're coming off a big win over Ohio State, you're in control of your position in the Big Ten. Like, what are some of the things that Dan Lanning needs to be focused on right now, refining with his group as they continue to move forward in conference play?
Well, knowing Dan Lanning and being a really good football coach like he is, right, he's doubling down on, all the little things that he sees, right, whether it's pre-snap penalties. Lots of times it's effort plays, right? And what good coaches will do when a team's winning like they are is they'll start a team meeting with, 10 plays they found on film where guys are being a little lazy or guys are making mental errors that they shouldn't make because they've talked about it before. And what that does, right, is it really brings, the athletes back down to earth and holds them accountable. And so my guess is it's that focus of, right, like, hey, we had a false start penalty in a crucial situation, or, we're making a mistake on special teams that we work on in practice every day. It's less about the big rocks because, again, like you said, they're playing really well offense and defense, and they have a lot of momentum. And so you try and find ways, again, to bring those athletes back to earth a little bit and remind them that, hey, there are things you need to work on and staying locked in.
How about your thoughts on the job Sataki has done with BYU this season, a team not forecast to be in the running for a conference title?
Yeah, I love Kalani Sataki. I got to go out to the BYU Coaches Clinic a couple springs ago and was blown away at, when you talk about culture building, a guy that it just has everybody bought in and moving in the same direction. And they're able to – I think it's interesting because you talk about a roster that had a lot of turnover and you got a new quarterback coming in, right? And you just feel like one of the benefits to BYU is the ability to get mature football players, right, if they're coming back from their mission, things like that, because the locker room always is able to gel together because it feels like those athletes, right, they understand the expectations. They have a great head coach. There's obviously a tradition and history and all that goes into BYU. It's a little easier in this world of NIL and transfer portal to build fast. Plus, you watch those games, man, like great home field advantage. Again, like a lot to like, and I think it's a little easier to plug and play at a place like BYU just because of the way it's set up.
All right, Alex, you're going to be down in San Diego for the WSU San Diego State game, and I'm curious. The Aztecs struggled early, but they've won back-to-back games, and they're coming off a bye week as they get ready for this one. What are going to be the keys for the Cougs this weekend to get a win?
Really dangerous team, San Diego State is, like you said, coming off 2 wins, tight ones against Hawaii and Wyoming, but the bye week and getting healthy and all the things, I think go together to make them, again, a dangerous opponent. Really good defensively. They've got the defensive end that's tied for first in the country in sacks with 11 sacks. They've got, a really attacking front seven, which is a challenge for Washington State's offensive line. I think, it's a defense that's only given up about 22 points per game. So, on that side, it's a challenge. Offensively, right, we've known San Diego State to be this ball control, run the football team. And, now with Sean Lewis, they kind of spread it out. But, it's going to be an absolute barn burner. Like you said, it's two really good football teams. UNLV's played great defensively, unique on they want to run the football. They're going to RPO you to death. They're going to use different formations. I think it'll be a little bit of a struggle for a Boise State defense that plays kind of more of a dime package, right? They typically have more DBs on the field, and they really love to blitz. And I think against a run-heavy team, that can potentially create some problems because you can gash that a little bit if you hit it big. Obviously, the key for Boise State offensively, if you can keep it tight or you can get ahead with Ashton Genty, you can just lean on him. And he's such an X factor, as good as UNLV has been defensively. I really think that Genty is unstoppable at the point of attack. So to me, it's going to be about, can that Boise defense find a way to slow down that UNLV offense and the UNLV running game.
We're talking ball with former Coug Alex Brink here on the Rip City Drive. We want to touch on some NFL topics. The Chiefs have been beat up at receiver. They made a deal to bring in DeAndre Hopkins. How do you think he's going to fit in that offense?
Well, I mean, D-Hop's got all the talent in the world, and even as more of a veteran, kind of older guy, getting in that offense, Andy Reid's going to figure out a way to maximize his potential. And I mean, I think again, you want a guy that can come in, know the expectations. He's going to get excited, right, about being in that Chiefs offense and being with Patrick Mahomes. I think he'll fit in quick. The key is always kind of what's the transition of the playbook? What has he seen in a playbook? How can he assimilate quickly to that part? But my assumption is they get him involved quickly.
Okay, a question here on first we saw Aikman criticizing the Dallas receivers and their offense, and then Jerry Jones steps in, the owner, and kind of criticizes the creativity and the makeup of the plays they're running. How do you see what's going on down there in Dallas now?
I mean, typically dysfunctional, as Dallas has been for a long time, because, look, you can blame the play calling, you can blame the receivers, you can blame Dak, you can blame whatever you want. The reality is they don't run the football well, right? And they made a decision in the offseason to not go out and get, a more veteran, kind of more sought after running back, and rolled with the guy on the roster, and it really hasn't worked, and Zeke's obviously older too, so they don't run the football as well as they need to be successful. And then, to then say Dak and CD and, Cooks has been hurt and then, Tolbert stepped up. It's it's too much in the NFL if you don't have a running game. And so, again, I think the culture of the Dallas Cowboys is to kind of deflect blame from top down. And that's 100% what you saw with the comments over the last week or two.
All right, Brink, E4 Sports has had an opportunity to work with Cooper Kupp, who's one of the best receivers in the NFL. His name has popped up in trade rumors, and I'm just wondering, maybe it's any team, but, he's been rumored maybe possibly Pittsburgh, maybe Dallas taking a look at someone like that. But, for a guy like Kupp who's so good at everything, is there a particular type of offense that he would fit best in?
It's going to be really intriguing, right, as he's popped up in these trade rumors, because Cooper Kupp's kind of known one thing, right, and that's that Sean McVay offense, which has branched out to various places, whether it's Green Bay or Minnesota, Atlanta, and some of these places. I think there's a template for him that would make it really easy, and he would find success. I also think it would be a challenge if he ends up in an offense that is not of that system, because again, it's so detailed and he was so good in it that you go somewhere else and it's kind of a culture shock, because frankly, some of the other offenses are built in the NFL, they're not as good, and they may not be quite as good a fit for him. So again, that's, for me, it's ideally, and I don't know that this will play out, it's him finding a spot that has ties to that Sean McVay tree, because it'll be such a plug and play scenario for him. I think if he ends up somewhere else, I think there's much more of a transition.
Chad and I have sort of fallen for Jared Goff this year, his play, and I've said he's my favorite for MVP. I'm curious what you think of what he's done this season.
It's so fun. I mean, obviously having probably the best offense coordinator in football and Ben Johnson really helps, and a roster loaded with talent definitely helps. But Jared Goff, I mean, think back when Jared Goff got traded, from the Rams. And it was kind of this Stafford-Goff trade, and Goff had a couple tough seasons, but at the same time, I mean, look, he's a special player, right? I mean, he really is, and he had some good years with the Rams, and you felt like it's a great example of kind of a rebirth of a player when they go to a new place, and he really bought into that city of Detroit, and they've built kind of around him. So, I've thought a lot about Goff since he's came out of Cal. Feel really strongly about, him as a player in this league. It's cool to see him having that success.
Alex Brink, E4 Sports, with us here on the Rip City Drive. Hey, Alex, talk to us about your special, training that you do right now for, kids with football season and other sports, the specialized training you guys offer up.
Right. Yeah, check out e4sports.com. We got all sorts of options for young athletes in the Portland metro area. We got a new location in Vancouver. the core of what we do is sports performance training. So strength, speed, injury prevention, agility training. We got locations again in Vancouver, Beaverton, and over in Milwaukee on the east side off of McLaughlin Boulevard. Fantastic trainers. They're highly qualified, and all can build custom programs for your young athletes. Any sport, male, female, really age 10 and up, can come and get better and get themselves right off the field or off the courts. Check out e4sports.com or shoot us an email at team@e4sports.
All right, buddy. I'm glad you enjoyed Pronghorn. Have a good trip down to San Diego, and we'll talk to you next week.
Much appreciated, guys. Take care.
You got it. There's Alex Brink, former Coug here on the Rip City Drive.
Always a great guest.
I'm with you. I think Jared Goff would be right at the top of my MVP list right now. Just if we were to name an MVP today, his play has been sensational.
I just think he's been under the radar too much. I don't understand why he doesn't pop up with all the other names being considered. And I know Lamar Jackson, he's won it a couple times already, so you think of him. But come on, this guy's having a terrific season.
Well, I think what hurt him was if the great Sean McVay trades you and doesn't want you anymore, people have to assume there's something wrong with you. But
Yeah.
he's been reborn in Detroit and is the absolute key to what they're trying to do on offense. Clearly, the offensive line and being able to run the football and having great, playmakers with speed on the outside helps. But he's an accurate passer that makes good decisions, and you can tell his teammates respect him. I just think he's done a heck of a job. I like him, too.
Yeah. I
Sharp
think
guy.
the whole city of Detroit just loves him.
Like I said, any NFC team that has to play in that dome come playoff time, good luck with that because they're hard to stop on that turf.
Yeah.
And their offensive line is super legit. All right, we'll come back. The red-faced owner was full of life. He was large and in charge last night as the Clippers unveiled their new arena, which is pretty sharp.
Old Tomato Face was very proud last night.
We'll get into that next. And then 5 o'clock hour, Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, will join us in studio. Well, Godfather, I never thought I would say this, but I really want to make a trip down to L.A. and watch a basketball game at the Intuit Dome, the brand new vision and arena that was put together by the red-faced owner, Mr. Ballmer himself. And last night, when you see the images and the videos of what was taking place with the amenities that they have, Ballmer put together a masterpiece. But my favorite part of the entire story was what he did to make sure he had the clearance to get that arena done. The Forum is owned by James Dolan, who is a guy that operates the Knicks, also is the front man for a horrendous band.
I was saying, come on, give him his due. He's more known as a rock and roll superstar.
JD in the straight shot, that because of his money and his connections was able to somehow work his way into being an opening act for the Eagles, which is a travesty. It's really awful, and it was awful. I saw with my own eyes, as did the Godfather.
Yeah,
but what Ballmer did that was awesome, and I understand why Dolan had an issue with this. He didn't want the new arena to go in because the Forum is a big-time concert venue down in L.A.
Yeah.
And he put in some money to refurbish it and put it together. It's known for its acoustics, and they have a lot of good shows down there. Well, Dolan was concerned that the Intuit Dome would impact his concert sales and being able to book shows, which he's probably right. So he put in a lawsuit on Ballmer to try and slow down the construction and try to come to a solution. So Ballmer's like, you know what? How much do you want for that Forum? How's $400 million? He just flat out bought it from Dolan so he could get the clearance he needed to get his Intuit Dome done. That's how rich people get things done.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. He doesn't let anything stand in his way.
What was the most impressive part that you saw in regards to the new Intuit Dome for the Clippers?
Oh, gosh. I mean, he's already got all these events secured for that arena already. I mean, he's got a lot of pull, obviously. He's got the 2026 NBA All-Star Game. We can't get one in Portland, but, boy, he's got that one booked. He's also going to have the 28 L.A. Olympic basketball. That's going to be in there, too.
Of course
Those are two huge events he's booked. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the toilet situation, Chad. He bragged about it so much while it was being built. They have 1,160 toilets, 3 times more than the average NBA arena, and it means that there is one toilet for every 15 seats. He wants people to be able to get in, get out, and get back to rooting for his Clippers. He's done the same thing with the concession stands. Every concession stand has the same menu to minimize decision-making, and fans will do contactless checkout, which the Blazers have too, credit card stuff, so you can go in to grab and go and get right back to your seat. And the Blazers have a lot of that going too with their little markets that they have on the concourse now.
It's pretty impressive. What is that screen called with the replays and everything?
It's a halo screen because it's circular. It goes all the way around the arena. It's spectacular. Didn't you think? You saw the video, right?
It was remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And red-faced Ballmer was out there celebrating with his fans and dancing and stuff.
Yeah. By the way, all the seats are heated, and they have USB ports so you can charge your phone, and they even have massage settings.
You get a free massage during the game.
Yeah. You can answer questions. They're wired up so that they can ask you trivia questions during the game. You can answer them and all that. What am I leaving out? There's a bunch of really special stuff, Chad, that's just incredible,
Well,
I think.
what's going to happen now is that this Intuit Dome, this will now be the standard for all NBA arenas, period. Yeah. This will be the standard, and he's going to get a lot of big-time events down there, and the NBA will want to hold events in that arena moving into the future because of its state-of-the-art facility. And now my guess would be when you have a genius like Ballmer put together a dome like this, there'll be other owners around the NBA that will want to either get a new place or rework and configure their current arenas to be able to have some of the amenities that they have because the Clippers have now taken it to a different level. Hopefully, they'll be able to figure out the basketball product now because the arena is state-of-the-art. They just need to get their team to match up with the arena now.
I'll tell you what, Blazer fans better be rooting hard for them. They better be rooting, big Clipper fans. And I'll tell you why. Guess who has their first-round pick this year?
The Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah.
And it's unprotected,
Correct,
right?
my friend.
Unprotected?
Unprotected first-round pick.
Well, the good news is the Clippers are not going to be bad enough to where Oklahoma City could launch themselves into the top spot to be able to get Cooper Flag.
You would hope not. Yeah, you would hope not. I just know how the NBA is. A lot of funny things happen, you know? They traveled to over 100 arenas around the world looking for ideas to make this arena special, and they took ideas from everywhere. But the high-tech aspect of it is incredible, I think.
Well, you would expect that, right? You can't have Ballmer put together an arena and not have the high-tech aspect be off the charts.
Yeah. Just the USB chargers at the seats and heated seats and all that. That's incredible. And they also have the college student section type end zone where only Clipper fans can sit there and they have to scream their heads off for the Clippers.
Yeah, I can't wait to get down there and check it out. And the other part that's really nice, too, is that Inglewood, with the arrival of the new football facility, the renovations that were done at the Forum, and I think you mentioned Ballmer actually paid for a lot of the street changes and the improvements that were made. Like, if you know the Inglewood area from 25, 30 years ago, when you go down there now, and I've been down there recently, you wouldn't even recognize it. The streets are nice. The whole area has been completely changed because of the arrival of, the football and the basketball arenas. It's amazing. It looks totally different down there from what it did back in the day. Because Inglewood was known as not one of the best areas of town.
Yeah, understatement.
Which is where the Forum stood. Mm-hmm. But now with the arrival of this stuff and the improvements they made with the streets and stuff, it's pretty amazing. What's shocking to me is how much Ballmer's charging for parking down there. What'd you say it is, $70 a car?
Yeah, you can park for $70.
That's absurd. $70 for parking for an NBA game?
Yeah, I think you're encouraging people to take some form of public transportation, which isn't really that great down in that part of the world.
Yeah, they encourage it, but knowing that everyone's going to continue to drive and then pay that type of price for parking. $70?
They probably have a lot of rich fans. You got to admit that.
We like to make fun of the red-faced owner for being crazy because he probably is. But I got to give it up to him, man. He created a masterpiece here, an absolute masterpiece. And he spared no expense putting the money into the Intuit Dome.
Yeah. Yeah, and people look at the Moda Center and say, well, it's not that old. But you have to look at it in comparison to other venues. And you're going to see some renovation done on the Moda Center. And I think the Blazers are smart to be looking at doing that because you got to keep up with the Joneses here.
The double-sided display on the Halo board is comprised of 38,375 square feet of digital canvas and more than 230 million LEDs. Trying to contextualize the Halo board is a mind-boggling experience, according to Forbes.
That's amazing.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. We'll touch on some football, a unique alliance in Green Bay, and also we'll hear from Jarrah. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, it's now 4 o'clock chat here. Good afternoon, my friends. Trailblazers back in action tomorrow night after dropping the opener to the Warriors for the first of 2 games against the New Orleans Pelicans at Moda. Tip-off at 7. Chris Burkhart will have game day live from Moda at 5 on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light. The Pelicans are going to be without Dejounte Murray, who's out indefinitely with a fractured hand. Thursday night football, a 5:15 kick on Prime. The 5-1 Vikings are in L.A. to meet the Rams, and Minnesota is favored by 3. The World Series will get underway tomorrow. The Yankees and Dodgers from Dodger Stadium. First pitch at 5:08 on Fox. Your pitching matchup is Garrett Cole taking on Flaherty. Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, going to join us in studio coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. All right, Godfather, some other details on the Intuit Dome. The outer area is bordered by Roman steps. It's got a full court regulation basketball court, full size, and they're going to have a bar, and they've got a couple of restaurants and a 5,000 square foot team store, which is pretty awesome. And the whole setup and the way that it looks just from the outside as you view it, it's spectacular. Now, as you work your way inside, once you're in your seat, there's a number of different things going on. The arena offers the most legroom in the NBA, whether you're sitting courtside or in the upper bowl.
Wow.
Each seat has got a USB port to charge your phone, a built-in controller to play the games on the Halo, and decibel meter that gauges the movement and sound of each individual fan. The loudest and rowdiest will be rewarded with discounts on food and merchandise. According to this report, when you get to your seat, make sure you scream and stomp until you turn blue. If your decibel levels are high enough, you'll get a notification on the Clippers app that you've earned half off on the LA Street Dog or a Kawhi Leonard bobblehead, for example. The concessions at Intuit are fully automated. Their grab-and-go markets are everywhere throughout the arena. You'll just pick what you want from a buffet and walk right out, tap your phone at the gate and check out. Or you can pay with the lung power by cashing your well-earned discount through your Clippers account. The entire journey was designed to take 2 minutes or less, and there are about 200 shot clocks stationed around the dome so you don't miss a play. That is unbelievable. It's also a net zero stadium. They've got everything down there.
You know, I'm glad to see somebody designing an arena for fans to make it easier for fans to watch and enjoy a game.
So you need to go down there just so we can get a full report on the media area.
Yeah, that will be interesting.
Because that's how you judge an arena or a stadium. How's the media set up?
Of course. And the media dinner, by the way,
Yeah.
which is always a key.
My guess would be, based on the effort he put into the Intuit Dome, that the media accommodations are pretty good.
And I think he's very conscious of good PR. I think he wants
And
a
in
lot
that
of positive
town,
publicity.
with so many teams and so many things going on,
Yeah.
you need to give incentives to the media to show up and cover your team.
Well, he's always been the underdog. I mean, not him, but the Clippers have always been the underdogs.
Bottom of the totem pole in Los
Yeah.
Angeles.
Yeah. Below not only the Lakers, but the Dodgers, probably the soccer team, the Rams. Now, I don't know about the Chargers, but a lot of other, teams that are down there. The hockey team, Kings.
I don't think the Chargers are embraced by the
Yeah.
locals. They're
Yeah.
considered outsiders.
Mm-hmm.
They still get to play in a beautiful stadium, but yeah,
They
it's
sure
not,
do.
It's not their town. That's the Chargers for you, though. They're one of those franchises where ownership, questionable decisions over time. Until they hired Jim Harbaugh, I was concerned that, Justin Herbert might have wound up with, subpar franchise and not be in a position to have a chance to win. But they went out and spent the money and hired Jim Harbaugh. So it's helped me change the way I view them for now.
Well, San Diego's just one more city that said, hey, I'm not going to build a stadium for some billionaire to have his little football team, and that's fine. You don't have to play that game, but you don't have to have a team either.
No. All right, Jerry Jones back at it once again. We made a list of coaches, potential coaches who could be fired soon. Mike McCarthy would be on the list, Nick Sirianni, Doug Peterson, Antonio Pierce with the Raiders, Brian Daboll with the Giants, Dennis Allen with the Saints. Which one of those guys is going to be first? I don't know the answer to that yet, but it would seem to me that McCarthy's a lame duck coach and things aren't going well in Dallas, that Jerry could be looking to make some changes. But take a listen to his latest criticism where Jerry's kind of unloading on poor play design.
Yes.
Who designs the plays?
Head coach is also calling the plays.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy. Let's take a listen to Jerry.
We've, in my mind, we're not playing very good football right now at all. And it's beyond whether or not we have Derrick Henry or not. Derrick Henry is having a career year. I don't know if he'd be having that career year in our situation. And that's really something you really do have to look at, because if he had not had as many carries as our running backs have had, then he certainly probably wouldn't have attained the level of impact he's having. And then he's a real good complement to the type of offense they run. We don't run that type of offense at all. Our situation is more about, frankly, it's more about holding your blocks. It's more about not making mistakes. It's more about, in my mind, the receivers running through a tough man-to-man coverage and running on through it. And, if you will, get away from that. The types of things that we all think we should be looking at is, well, we're designing bad plays or we're designing bad concepts. The facts are that there's some of that, but there's also some of execution. There's some of the talent. I like our talent. I really do like our talent. I like our young talent. But young talent has a few more mistakes associated with it than if you are dealing with a veteran player.
All right, there's Jerry. I would think if I'm a head coach and my owner starts talking about poor execution, poor play design, and not holding blocks, that's an indictment of me and the coaching job I've done.
I don't think you very often hear an owner indict his coach like that. That's pretty strange, really.
He also said, we're not playing very good football in my mind.
Yeah. He reminds me a bit of George Steinbrenner attacking Billy Martin. That's the only time you hear. Steinbrenner was classic for attacking his own guys, but most owners have enough sense not to do that.
Well, the two franchises that I think are just dumb, Bill Belichick was available, right? And no one wanted to hire him. Mm-hmm. The Cowboys decided to keep McCarthy knowing that he was going to be a lame duck coach, which made no sense in my mind. And the Eagles probably wanted to fire Nick Sirianni, but they decided to hold on and keep him for another year. They're both dumb. They should have just hired Belichick, bit the bullet, and brought him in. Yeah, I know you're going to have to give up some of your power. He's going to want more control than you want to give up, but at least he'll come in and right the ship and get you back on track.
For sure.
But they didn't do that.
Can Jerry work with Belichick, do you think?
Well, he worked with Bill Parcells.
Yeah.
So if he can work with Bill Parcells, he can work with Bill Belichick.
This is kind of a different time in Jerry's life, though. He's getting a little bit on the desperate side, it sounds like.
That's true, but yes, I do think he can. Jerry he's always going to talk and he's going to be involved, and Belichick would have to go in with the understanding that you're going to have to contend with your owner a little bit, but that's what you get paid that type of money for. Yeah, if your owner wants to be involved, then so be it. You just have to play that game. That's part of it.
If you're going to bring him in, you're going to have to write a pretty big check, too. Huh?
Yeah, you got to spend a lot of money to get one of those type of coaches, whether it's Philly or Dallas or whatever. Belichick's not coming on the cheap. And why should he? He's won 7 Super Bowls. He could just give him the middle finger and say, screw you, man.
Yeah. I got all this media stuff going. What do I need you for?
I don't need you, but I want to coach, but I'm not going to do it for chump change. But what I would do if I were Jerry, I know it's hard for him because he wants control, but I would like to see Jerry get a chance to win another championship. And the way things are going right now, it's not going to happen. He just needs to take a bit of a step back, like a half a step or a scotch, and allow Belichick the freedom to come in and do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
For my own personal reasons. I want to see Belichick roaming the sidelines in Dallas because I would be fascinated by the whole situation. How's it going to work with him and Jerry? How much control does Bill have? How much does Jerry want to be involved in the decision-making day-to-day? I would be fascinated by the